European Union countries have agreed to impose new tariffs of up to 35% on electric cars from China. That's on top of the existing 10% duties.
Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez visited China for 4 days, and at the end of the trip, he had called on the EU to reconsider these tariffs. And soon after that, you have a German government official, a spokesperson, welcoming the Spanish move.
Germany's decision to abstain from a critical vote on electric vehicle tariffs aimed at China has sent ripples through the European Union, and it's more significant than you might think. For decades, Germany has been a leader in the automotive industry, known for powerhouse brands like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Volkswagen. Now, in a surprising turn of events, the country seems hesitant to jump into the ongoing trade conflict with China. The question is, why is Germany pulling back at such a pivotal moment? Is this the beginning of a larger shift in European economic policies that could shake the entire automotive industry? As Europe rushes toward greener technology and electric vehicles, tensions between the European Union and China are at an all-time high. With the EU proposing hefty tariffs of up to 37.6% on Chinese-made electric vehicles, EVs, many are left wondering, what does this mean for the future of the car industry? And why is Germany, of all countries, choosing to sit on the sidelines? Let's dive into the details. To understand the gravity of Germany's decision, we first need to look at the bigger picture. The EU has been ramping up efforts to promote electric vehicles as part of its Green Deal, aiming to reduce carbon emissions and push the automotive industry towards sustainability. But China, the world leader in EV production, has become a major player in the European market, thanks in part to government subsidies that make Chinese EVs more affordable and competitive. The European Commission claims that these subsidies give Chinese manufacturers an unfair advantage, allowing them to flood the European market with cheap EVs. In response, the EU has proposed a range of tariffs, with the highest being 37.6%, to level the playing field for European car makers. These tariffs are meant to protect local manufacturers and ensure that the European market isn't overwhelmed by cheaper alternatives from China. But here's the catch. Germany, which has one of the largest car industries in Europe, isn't fully on board with these tariffs. In fact, the country's Vice Chancellor, Robert Habeck, has been pushing for a more diplomatic approach, urging both sides to engage in talks rather than jump headfirst into a trade war. Habeck made it clear that a full-blown trade conflict would be detrimental to both the EU and China, and Germany is hoping to avoid that outcome. Germany's decision to abstain from the advisory vote on tariffs sends a clear message. The country is deeply invested in its automotive industry, and any disruption could have significant economic consequences. By holding off on voting, Germany is essentially keeping its options open, signaling that it's not ready to fully support the EU's aggressive approach just yet. But why is Germany taking this cautious stance? The answer lies in the country's economic ties with China. Over the years, China has become a major trading partner for Germany, especially in the automotive sector. German car manufacturers like Volkswagen and BMW have significant operations in China, and a trade conflict could severely impact their business. By abstaining from the vote, Germany is trying to protect its own interests while also maintaining its commitment to fair competition. Habeck has stressed that Germany isn't afraid of competition with China, but wants to ensure that the competition is fair. This delicate balancing act reflects Germany's desire to avoid a trade war, while also ensuring that its car industry isn't undermined by cheaper Chinese alternatives. Germany's decision has sparked mixed reactions across Europe. While some countries like Spain are aligned with Germany in pushing for a diplomatic solution, others are more eager to embrace the proposed tariffs. Countries like Poland, Italy, and Hungary see this as an opportunity to boost their own local car production, especially if Chinese imports are limited by tariffs. This division within the EU makes the situation even more complex. The European Commission is moving forward with its investigation into Chinese EV pricing, arguing that state subsidies have given Chinese manufacturers an unfair advantage. If the tariffs are approved, they could reshape the European automotive landscape, making it more difficult for Chinese EVs to compete and potentially boosting local production. However, not everyone is convinced that tariffs are the right solution. Critics argue that raising tariffs on Chinese EVs could lead to higher prices for consumers, making electric vehicles less affordable at a time when the EU is trying to encourage greener transportation. Additionally, there's the risk of retaliation from China, which could escalate the situation into a full-blown trade conflict. Spain, which has historically been a supporter of fair competition, is now finding itself in an interesting position. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has recently met with Chinese President Xi Jinping to discuss the issue, emphasizing the need for dialogue rather than conflict. Spain, much like Germany, sees the potential for economic fallout if a trade war with China erupts. As a result, Spain is advocating for a diplomatic solution that avoids the need for harsh tariffs. Other EU nations, however, are not as cautious. Poland, Italy, and Hungary, for example, are less reliant on Chinese imports and see the tariffs as an opportunity to boost their own local car production. By limiting Chinese competition, these countries hope to strengthen their own automotive industries and create more jobs domestically. This division within the EU is making it difficult for the European Commission to move forward with a unified strategy. While some countries are pushing for tough action against China, others are more hesitant, fearing the potential economic consequences of a trade conflict. China, of course, is not sitting idly by as the EU considers imposing these tariffs. Chinese officials, including Commerce Minister Wang Wentao, have criticized the proposed tariffs as protectionist and warned that China could retaliate if the EU moves forward with its plans. Wang's upcoming talks in Brussels will be crucial in determining the next steps in this conflict. Both sides are aware that a trade war would be damaging to their economies, and they are hoping to find a solution that avoids escalating tensions further. However, if the EU decides to impose the tariffs, China is likely to respond with its own measures, which could affect a wide range of industries beyond just electric vehicles. This potential for retaliation adds another layer of complexity to the situation. While the EU is focused on protecting its car industry, it also has to consider the broader economic impact of a trade conflict with China. If China imposes its own tariffs or restrictions on European goods, the consequences could be far-reaching, affecting everything from manufacturing to agriculture. Germany's decision to abstain from the tariff vote comes at a time when its own electric vehicle market is struggling. Recent reports show that the market share for battery electric vehicles, BEVs, in Germany has plummeted, dropping a staggering 68.8% from the previous year. This decline is due in part to the German government cutting incentives for EV purchases, but it's also a sign of the growing uncertainty around tariffs and trade policies. If the proposed tariffs go through, Germany's car industry could face even greater challenges. Higher prices for Chinese EVs could lead to decreased competition, but they could also result in higher costs for consumers, making electric vehicles less affordable. This could slow down the transition to greener transportation in Germany and across Europe, which is a major concern for policymakers. Germany's car industry is a significant part of its economy, and any disruption could have far-reaching effects. By pushing for a diplomatic solution, Germany is trying to protect its own interests while also ensuring that the European market remains competitive. The stakes for the European car industry couldn't be higher. If the EU moves forward with the proposed tariffs, it could reshape the automotive landscape in Europe, making it more difficult for Chinese EVs to compete and potentially boosting local production. However, this comes with significant risks, including higher prices for consumers and the potential for retaliation from China. For countries like Germany, which have deep economic ties to China, the consequences of a trade conflict could be severe. German car manufacturers like Volkswagen and BMW have significant operations in China, and any disruption could impact their business. By advocating for a diplomatic solution, Germany is trying to avoid a situation where it has to choose between protecting its industry and maintaining fair trade practices. The European Commission's investigation into Chinese EV pricing is ongoing, and the final vote on the proposed tariffs is expected by the end of October. The outcome of this vote will have far-reaching implications, not just for the car industry, but for global trade as a whole. What's next for EU-China trade relations? As the clock ticks down to the final vote, the future of EU-China trade relations hangs in the balance. Both sides are aware of the potential consequences of a trade conflict, and there is still hope that a diplomatic solution can be reached. However, if the EU moves forward with the tariffs, it could set the stage for a new era of trade tensions between Europe and China. The outcome of this dispute will likely shape future trade policies and alliances, both within the EU and on a global scale. The stakes are high, and the need for diplomacy and cooperation has never been more critical. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future updates. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think Germany's stance will impact the future of electric vehicles in Europe? Let's continue the conversation.